first. I, like many of us, have watched on in frustration at the anti-war protests in Melbourne this week. Not just because acid, horse poo and canned food, among other items, were pelted at police and even police horses causing them harm, but because our values and social fibres are being ripped apart by these idiots or the so-called tolerant left who apparently care about peace and preach it, but not, of course, when it suits them. They really hate this beautiful country. And it's even more frustrating that these drongos have been egged on by the extremist Greens. More on that shortly. But I can't help but wonder if this is a glimpse into the future of this country. Unless we affirm and push back against this nonsense, I worry anarchy, shambles, hate for Australians, hate for this country will become the new norm if we are not there already. It is a frightening thought, but one that does need to be addressed. Because our social cohesion started fracturing after October 7, when Gas the Jews and Where's the Jews became a point of contention at the Sydney Opera House. The police dismissed it, and since then we have seen other anti-Israel and anti-Semitic incidents on university campuses and in other places across the country. And it has to be said, our immigration program has let people in who do not represent our values. That is loud and clear. But my worry is that many who attended the protest this week are actually born in Australia. Born and bred Aussies who have been indoctrinated to hate this country. And this is even more dangerous, in my view, than the immigrants who undermine our values, because these Aussies have no moral clarity about who is the enemy and who is not. I mean, have a look at the posters for the Melbourne protests, telling people the colony will fall. The colony, of course, meaning Australia. They want this country to fall. Not the terrorists of Hamas, not the dangerous regimes of Russia, China and North Korea, but our democracy. And this is where the culture wars, I believe, play a part in clouding the views of this generation. Take Australia Day, for example. They don't just want the date of that event changed. Anti-Australia Day protesters were even chanting "abolish the state" earlier this year. Then, of course, we know companies like Woolworths got involved and suddenly you have full-blown cultural division. Then there was the Voice to Parliament campaign. We'll say no more about that. Kids are being welcomed to country when they walk into classrooms, being told to apologise to the stolen generation, being told it is their fault, and the list goes on. And suddenly they're brainwashed with all sorts of cultural and divisive nonsense. And these culture wars matter because they have taught this next generation that Australia is not a good place, that Australians are bad people. The progressive left have been slowly infiltrating and ultimately seeking to tear down the values and traditions of the Australia that once was, with the end goal of destroying everything that British settlers actually brought into this beautiful country of ours. And as the Flyers said, they want the colony to fall. That is how they are justifying these outrageous, violent protests like what we've seen in Melbourne. And look, have a look here at the Greens. I can't remember the last time they even mentioned the environment. They are nothing more than a sinister, hateful bunch of activists. Have a listen to the Defence spokesperson for the Greens, David Shoebridge, addressing the protesters in Melbourne today.
I have made it clear in multiple interviews in Parliament, just then in Land Forces, that mine is a party whose core pillars include peace and non-violence. We say there's no place for violence in politics. We say there's no place for violence in public gatherings. But we call out as well. We call out as well the extreme violence that came from the Victorian police. This is not Chicago 1968. This is Melbourne in 2024.
I mean, can you believe the nerve of this guy? The hypocrisy. How can he seriously be out there promoting peace yet failing to even mention the disgusting behaviour of the protesters. Has he seen this, or does that not suit the Greens' warped narrative?
You can see it here. Here you go. They're quite literally throwing things at the police as they're trying to do their job.
Yeah, that was really difficult to see.
Yeah, it's shocking. And what do the activist Greens want? They want an independent inquiry into the use of force at the protests. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. God help this country in the event of a Labor Greens minority government led by Anthony Albanese and the de facto Prime Minister Adam Bandt. It is a disaster. As I asked earlier, is this a glimpse into our future? We must be stronger in pushing back and not be afraid to push back against those who seek to divide our country and are full of hate. And I would say this to the protesters: if you really hate this country so much, leave. Seriously, leave. The door is open. Go to Gaza. Please go to the place that you are so passionate about. Leave the place you hate so much and want to see fall. But put it this way, we will not be mourning your loss.